Look good.
I can see it. Oh, and it's all the holiday updates.
Oh.
Great.
I went fully branded in the red.
All right. If you want to start playing, I'm going to admit everybody in.
Sounds good.
Here we go.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and everyone in all the represented time zones. And to those of you who will watch this on demand later, I am Nicole Quatrock, joining you from Orlando, Florida. And on behalf of ALI and in the employee app, we'd like to welcome you to our last webinar of 2022, titled What's Trending Top Internal Communications Trends for 2023. I can't even believe I wrote something with the word like 2023, like we're there, we're so close. And as a refresher, the employee app was created by professionals over the decades in communications and HR experience that address all of the challenges that you are all here to discuss today. Their mobile technology is for the dispersed and deskless workforce. Let's start by having everyone in the chat just let us know where you are joining us from as well. You're more than welcome to drop in your LinkedIn. You can drop in a holiday cookie recipe. You can drop in a fun fact of the day. Not only is it our last webinar, it's also Taylor Swift's birthday. So that's my fun fact of the day, that we picked December 13th for our last webinar. And while everyone is warming up our chat box, and just go over the few housekeeping reminders before I turn it over to Amy. We are recording, so you will receive a copy of this tomorrow via a OneDrive link. If everyone can go ahead now and hover over their picture, there's 3 little dots in the corner. If you can change, just update your name and your company, just so that when there are questions, we can call on you and kind of know where you're coming from. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask them throughout the presentation. Amy will take questions throughout, and we will take them at the end. We'll leave a little bit of time for open Q&A. You can come on camera or place those in the chat box. Like I said, post-event, you'll have the presentation slides, the recording, and any other resources that the employee app has provided. And with that, I turn it over to our facilitator for the next about 45 minutes, Amy Jenkins, the Director of Client Strategy for the employee app.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Hello, everybody. Happy holidays. Thank you for joining us before you all hopefully take a nice break over the next couple of weeks. I know I always enjoyed this time of year because it was a little bit quieter. I got to kind of regroup on all the things I wanted to wrap up, and then also look ahead into the next year when everybody else was out on vacation. So I didn't take a lot of vacation this time of year because I liked having that time to myself in the office. But we appreciate you all being here today. Excited to get to talk to you, and thank the ALI team for inviting us to have this discussion. And I do hope that this is a discussion. So we're going to share 4 of our trends for 2023, but we would love to have you ask questions, share what you are planning on working on in the new year, some of the things that are going to be top priorities and focuses for you, make some connections with other attendees so you can have those conversations on LinkedIn and outside of this experience too. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get this started. Slideshow mode. All right, there we go. All right, so a little background. I currently lead the client success and strategy at the employee app. I've been with the company for about 4 years, but was a client prior to that. I led internal communications at Chipotle for about 10 years. So very passionate about employee communications, internal communications, specifically for the deskless workforce. Prior to my venture into communications, I spent time managing restaurants, working the front lines on the floor. And so I know what those challenges are. And I have loved making my career around helping people to identify ways to solve that. So you will see part of our discussion today will be shifted a little bit to that deskless workforce, because that is where so much of my passion and our passion as an organization really lies. But we're here to talk about what we see coming forward in 2023. And unfortunately, not all of this is putting the past behind us. There are still things that we need to keep talking about. We haven't solved all of our problems since the pandemic kicked off or in this past year. But I hope we'll be looking at things from some new angles, which is that first bullet point there in the workplace belonging and shifting away from talking about engagement all the time. We're also going to keep talking about the future of how we work. Right. And I hope that it's not just whether we're remote or in an office, but we do also take a look at that over 4 billion people population of the deskless workforce and how they fit into that bigger picture going forward and how we create some equality across that. We're going to talk about tech overload. I work for a tech company. I love technology and communications. I think it's critical to have in your toolbox, but there's some things we got to talk about there and some things we can do better as communications teams to ensure a better employee experience. And then finally, we have to talk about what matters, both to us as communicators and how we're going to propel ourselves forward, but also what is meaningful to our employees. What do they need from us and from our businesses in order to be successful in work and to help support them outside and in life as well. So the first trend is belonging is the new engagement. It's interesting. The first time I really heard this shift was at an ALI event over the summer in Boston. If any of you were there, you may remember it. In fact, if you were there, I'm sure you remember it because it was a really powerful talk. And I loved it. And immediately a light bulb went off for me because I've never really loved the idea of talking about employee engagement as a metric for success, right? And as a metric for determining whether employees are going to stay within our organization, feel valued within our organization, because engagement can mean so many things to so many different people. So shifting that thinking to the idea of belonging, right? Which I love this definition that is here. Feeling the security and support, a sense of acceptance and inclusion. That is so critical in the workplace. If we want to think about longevity, if we want to think about what is going to improve our employee retention, what is going to make somebody want to grow and evolve with our business, be an advocate for us outside of the office. It's that sense of, I'm important to this company. I belong here. There's something here for me, not just whether or not I'm going to show up for happy hour or whether I take the engagement survey. Those are all things we want people to do and participate, but that's not really a great measurement of whether or not they're committed to our companies and they feel important within our companies. And I like this point here of we can't really talk about culture without talking about belonging, right? And so much of the shift that happens within organizations is they're trying to become more open, and DEI discussions has leaned on the performative side of things, right? We're celebrating things, but we're not really understanding what that means to us as a business or why we should celebrate, or the people within our organization that are going to feel included or seen because we're recognizing different things within our organizations. So I think this is a really important shift for us to start to make. Stop talking so much about engagement. Doesn't mean you can never use the word, because there are definitely times it's still going to come up, especially within our HR teams. But when we really want to talk about what it means to our business long-term, how we're going to measure success, start to think about that belonging measurement. Do people feel like a part of our business? Do they feel seen and heard? And these, talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Microsoft has the 5 Ps that I think make a lot of sense to look at from a communications lens when employees are thinking about how they fit into the bigger picture and that belonging and that value that they're feeling from the organization. They're going to look at these 5 things: pay, perks, people, pride, and purpose. right? And that order, where that fits in the hierarchy is going to be different to every different person in your organization. And I think that's okay too. And that's the shift, looking beyond that engagement metric. Because if somebody comes to work every day because it's a good paying job, and that's really all they need from that experience today, that's okay, right? We can still value that employee. They can still be a valuable part of our business and part of our team, even if they don't have, they don't express their pride, by showing up for company events. Maybe they express that pride in the work that they do and the effort that they put in and the productivity that they put forward and the fact that they're in the room asking tough questions, right? Challenging us as an organization because they believe so strongly in what we do. So I will pause there for a second as we're going through this first trend. Does anyone have thoughts or questions about this shift, the idea of shifting from belonging or from engagement to belonging? And I can't see the chat pulled up, so I don't know if there's anything going on.
I really love this shift because I work for a 100% virtual environment, and I'm learning that one of the big differences in being fully virtual is it's hard to truly understand if someone is engaged. And so, the sentiment of belonging versus engaged is slight, but in this environment, it speaks to me. So I like this.
That's great. Yeah. And I think one of the challenges will still be measuring, right? How do we evaluate whether or not people do, believe in that? And I always come back to the think, say, feel, do, philosophy and the activation, right? I think that's ultimately what we're trying to measure. If people are feeling that belonging, are they activated, right? Are they doing, thinking, feeling, saying the things that we're hoping they're going to because of our communication? Which I think that shift too from belonging to engagement really ladders nicely the dotted line connection to retention, right? And when we're looking at how communication drives success within our business, that is a metric that we can really wrap our arms around. Is our communication strategy leading people to stay with us longer, grow and promote from within the organization? Communication plays a really critical role to that, and belonging certainly does. All right, we'll move on to trend number 2. The fight over the way we work will continue. There's a lot of passionate conversations that happen about the way of work today. And I personally think that the evolutions that we're seeing are wonderful. Not only because we are opening doors for people to, find where they work best and when they work best, and we're being more open to that opportunity, but it has also led to some really great conversations about the disparity between how we've treated employees that work in an office versus employees that work on the front lines. And oftentimes trying to communicate to them as if they're one audience. And so really looking at these segments and talking about the different ways in which we're working and how we're creating experiences for people that are in the office and remote has opened more doors about talking about the way that we talk about the employee experience for employees on those front lines, who haven't had a choice, quite frankly, right? They don't have options. They've been in their, plants and their restaurants and their retail shops all along the things that have happened over the last few years. And so now it's really important to stop thinking about just where we physically are present, but how are we working and what are the experiences that we're creating that build an environment where people feel like they belong, people feel like they're heard, but they also have an opportunity to continue to contribute to the success of the business and feel that value, regardless of where they've chosen to, plant their computer, plant their feet to get the job done. And it really does bring about this question of, should the employee experience be equal or equitable? And I think that, well, again, a slight distinction, it's a pretty big one. We, have seen for so long, especially when we're leaning toward that engagement metric, all of the perks we're providing for employees in that office space, right? Making sure that we have the birthday celebration, we have the happy hour, we are bringing in lunch, and always wanting people to gather together and connect and, have this great experience. And talking about creating a better overarching experience for all employees doesn't mean that you have to offer the same thing to each of those groups, but it means making sure that you are creating an opportunity that meets their needs and their wants to have this ability to draw out connection, and continue to have that better experience. And so I really like that idea of, you don't have to, it's not a one-to-one, right? It's understanding each of those different groups of employees and what they really need from your business and from your communication strategy to help propel them forward and put them in a place where they can find success, find growth opportunities, and feel valued again by the organization. You can specifically see this when we start to talk about different generations. And I know not everybody loves the generational discussion, but it's really important that we have it. Because again, we need to segment our audiences. We can't treat everyone the same and think that everybody has the exact same expectations. We do have to tailor our approach to an extent to make sure that everybody feels heard. And one of the things that, can be given kind of a bad rap for is that Gen Z coming into the workforce has these different expectations, right? They want to be making a lot of money right away. They want to have a lot of the same perks as people that have been with the company for 30 years, because they value their life outside of work just as much as they value the job that they do, right? That's a shift in our thinking that could be really positive if we do it the right way. So it's important to, as we are changing some of our benefits that we offer, right, to make sure that we're bringing in, the newer generations to an environment that they feel comfortable with and they feel included into, that we're not forgetting about the people that have also been working here for a long time and feel like they've paid their dues, right? And so that comes into a lot of how we communicate these changes we're making. And it's maybe not so much just communicating out to people, but bringing people into these discussions, making sure that we are establishing focus groups across all different leaders across our business, right? All different places people are working, those that are in the office, those that are remote, those that are on the shop floor, those that have been with the company for 30 years, those that joined a month ago. Bring them into these conversations to talk about the experience that you're creating in your business and identify those ways that you are going to meet the needs of everyone. Or if you're not going to meet one of those needs, you'll know it and you'll be able to address that in your communication strategy, right? You'll be able to take that back to leaders and say, all right, I love this idea of unlimited PTO, and 75% of the company is all in on it, but there's this 25% that right now earns 8 weeks a year. And there's no way that in this new policy, they feel like they're going to be able to take off their 8 weeks, but they're also not going to get paid out for it. So how are we going to address them? Right. So it doesn't mean you have to accommodate necessarily all of those different ways of thinking, but it's being able to prepare for it and address it so that people feel heard, people feel included, and they see the plan. They feel valued. We've got a trend going already, right? Employees feeling valued within your business. I think is maybe the top trend of 2023, making sure that people see themselves in your plans. So thoughts about the way we work. Does anybody have things that you're going to do next year to start to bridge this gap between your remote, your office? Are you still having this discussion broadly? Do you see it shifting? Do you see yourselves going back into office as the risks of the pandemic start to wane away?
If anyone wants to come off of mute and answer that for Amy, there was also a question in the chat as you were going through trend 2 that was from Chris Michael. I said, can you explain the distinction between equitable and equal experiences? So just dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, I think that the distinction really becomes it's not a 1-for-1, right? You don't have to offer the exact same thing to different groups within your business. It's really identifying that they are different. And therefore, the value add to your frontline worker might be different than the value add to your remote employee, might be different than the perk or the value add for the group in the office. So it's not because you're not going to offer you're not going to take away an hour on the shop floor and have a party. Maybe you have a safety thing. You can't do that right in that environment. It doesn't mean you shouldn't still do it for the office, right? You still want to celebrate with that group of employees. You still want to show them their value to the business, give them an opportunity to connect and engage. So it's identifying what you can do for that frontline workforce, what you can do for those employees that are on the shop floor, so that they too feel like you're making that same effort, right? You're investing time in them and their experience to make sure that they don't just hear about the holiday party that was had that they didn't get invited to, right? I think that's been a challenge for years with companies that have a frontline workforce and a desk bound, whether that's remote or in an office, right? That inequity of everybody over here gets to go do this thing together because business is only open from 8 to 5 for the corporate employees, but because we run 3 shifts in the manufacturing facility, we can't have that party because we can't shut down a shift, we can't lose that productivity, right? So it's being intentional and finding ways to create a great experience, no matter which of those segments of the business you are a part of. Other questions or thoughts?
Just reading off some of the chat, Sheila from Global Atlantic said their company is in the office 3 days a week and provides a nice balance for enjoying the energy with the coworkers, still having the flexibility of working from home.
Love them. That's great. All right. Oh, and then I skipped over a slide of what does this mean for internal communications? But I think we just talked about all of this, making sure that you are intentionally thinking about the experience for all of your employees when you're putting together those communication strategies and ideas. And of course, taking them back to your leadership team, right? You are so tuned in as a communicator within your organization to the different needs of the different employee groups and audiences within your business. Make sure to bring that back to your leadership team. That is such an incredible value add that you can make to your business, to speak up for everyone. And when you see something, when you see a communication, that's being recommended, that's about to cross, and you go, oh, that's not going to be well received by this audience, speak up, challenge that. You are, strategic. You are not just the pusher out of communications. So it's important when you're going to ultimately have to clean it up if it goes out and it isn't written correctly. Be there to speak up on behalf of those other audiences and help be part of the solution for bringing those different audiences together and creating that better experience across your business. Tech overload. Oh my goodness. As I mentioned at the onset of the discussion, working for a tech company, and one of the reasons I switched Chipotle and joined the employee app was because I am so passionate about the idea of having technology solutions for communications, having an ability to reach all employees directly across your business, I think is so critical. And all companies are starting to move this direction, but it's not just communications that are shifting here. It is everybody in our business has seen, especially over the last couple of years, this need for a digital experience for employees, this need to be able to provide access via technology for all different elements of our business, some of which are accessed while we're at work, some of which are accessed outside of work. And what it's starting to do is create a negative experience, right? What was supposed to create efficiencies for our employees is actually creating confusion. And in some ways, it's tuning employees out from using these tools that can benefit them in so many incredible ways. And so as communications professionals, we're going to really have to take a look over the next year and talk about how do all of these things fit together? What experience are we trying to create for our employees? And what all are we telling them that they need to access? Because that is going to get in the way of that efficiency that we're trying to create for them. We're making them pick and choose which ones to go to. We're making them memorize how many passwords, right? Which passwords are a huge barrier to entry to any kind of a digital experience. So how can we work across our business? So kind of a sidebar to this is the collaboration between other stakeholders across your company, both from a technology perspective, as well as from an overarching communications perspective. How are we understanding how each of us impact the employee experience, and specific to this side, the employee digital experience? It doesn't mean all of these tools are bad, right? A lot of them are critical to your company. But if we're trying to launch them all at the same time, and if we are trying to, drive this usage across all of these apps and, different resources that we're giving employees access to within our businesses at the same time, it's an overload experience, and they're going to pick the one that they need to do their job every day, right? So that might be they have a new tool that helps them clock in and out of work. That's going to be the one they go to, right? Or the one that gets them to their pay stub, because that's information that they need all of the time. The new tool that helps them with employee recognition, as an example, right? Maybe it's a training tool that they have access to now. If that's not something that they need to do their job, that might be the one that gets pushed to the side because it's too much. It's too many things for them to remember to go to and when to go to. So it's going to be really important that we're bringing people together to talk about what our, prime state is for this in our business. Bring everybody around the table and talk about, what are you using? What do you plan to use? Are you launching something new? How do all of these things fit together, and how do we bring them to a place where it makes it easier for employees, which was the intention all along? So a couple of things that this means for us as communicators is raising our hands to ask those tough questions. Is this really going to add value? Can any other tool or system we do this effectively? Can we access other tools and systems through, one of the ones that they're already logging into? So again, we are consolidating all of these access points and making it easier on our employees, helping them see these efficiencies. Are we rolling things out in a strategic way? I mean, that's a big part of this, right? I don't know how many of you have seen a technology adoption curve, but it's a great resource. You can just Google it. We have some as well. Maybe Sydney could throw our example in the chat. But it shows you the different groups of employees across your business and how frequently they will adopt technology, right? And you will have certain groups that it takes a long time for them to get on board with trying something new in your organization. So if you are constantly rolling out new tools, they may never adopt yours. They may never adopt the HR tool, that they're trying to launch next door. You have to be strategic, and you've got to work across other departments to be that advocate for your employees and stand up and say, this is a great tool. I agree with you. I know why you selected it, but if we don't do this right, we'll be rolling this out for the next 2 years, because we're constantly going to have to recommunicate because it's not going to be priority. So you've got to have that roadmap for technology across your organization. And IT is probably going to own that, right? You're not specifically, but you can be an advocate for the communication strategy and the launch strategy around that to help it become successful. Finally, find integrations, right? Find ways, work with other departments to figure out how you make the introduction point for our employees into these different tools easy. How do you simplify that experience? Do you have a single sign-on option within your organization? That is a really easy way to help employees use one set of credentials to log into any system. And so if somebody is, whether you're launching the new tool yourself or somebody's coming to you and asking for your support in launching a new tool, those are simple questions to ask. What's going to be the experience for an employee to log in? And is there a way to make that easier? Again, you don't have to solve that tech problem, but you can make that suggestion because you understand that employee experience and you are a big owner of that across your business. So it'll be easier to communicate if it is an easier experience and you know that there's efficiencies that you're creating that you can communicate as a part of that. Thoughts on the idea of technology overload? Have any of you started to experience this already? Are you looking at different systems across your businesses going, man, we're going to have to think twice about some of this that we've been doing with our employees? I wish I could see the chat. It's not showing up for me right now. But if you have any thoughts, feel free to go off of mute and we can share those. All right, and we'll keep moving. Trend number 4 is really looking at what matters, right? Looking at what matters for us as communicators and what matters for the employees within our organization. This is again, we talk about things that have shifted over the last several years. And for all of the terrible things that have come out of the pandemic, this is one of the really positive ones to me, is that people are stopping and thinking about what matters to us as individuals, right? Why do I want to work for this company? Does it align with my values? What do I want to bring to the table to make a better experience for the employees around me and those that I work with? And we can bring so much of that to our communication strategy, right? That empathy with which communicators are so fantastic at working through, because we do think about the impact of what we say and what we do and when we say it and how we say it on the employee experience, that we can, again, really advocate for this across our businesses, to talk about how we do things, when we do things, why we do things, will make a tremendous impact on our employees, especially if we're doing it in the right way. And the reverse is always there too. If we don't do things in the right way, we're going to create a really negative experience across our business and for our people. And that, of course, is never something that we want to do when we're trying to create that sense of belonging across our organizations. So one of the two things that always, get in the way when we're talking about communicating what matters is, are we going to communicate too much? Or in some cases, are we communicating too little? The too much has been an issue forever, right? From my first week in communications at Chipotle, I remember going, oh my gosh, there is so much that these, employees are going to have to focus on if we send out all of this communication. But you can't cut it all away, because so much of the communication is important. So it becomes, identifying the how and the when and the where to be able to help employees prioritize what they need to see from you, when they need to see it, how they're going to receive it, right? All of the different channels that you're giving them access to. But you run the risk too of, again, saying too little. And that really comes back to a lot of the social issues, right? We see from a lot of the surveys that come out where we look at how employees are feeling about their company, how important it is for companies to talk about social impact, what's happening in the world around them. And there's, a sense of, if you don't say anything, you say everything, right? And so you have to be able to find that balance of getting the information out that's critical for your employees, but also making room for bringing in other communication that helps to highlight your culture, helps to bring in that belonging, helps to highlight your purpose as an organization. And one of the ways that is nice to be able to do this is doing a communications audit, right? Looking at all of the different channels that you use as an organization, the cadence of communication that you're sending out regularly, the audiences you're targeting that communication to, and get a sense of, on any given day across our organization, what are employees receiving from us as communicators, but also from other departments, other levels of the business, right? Because sometimes in our communications team, we're competing with HR or training or operations or safety, or there can be lots of different places where communication is coming from, and you don't necessarily have to own it all. I could give pros and cons to that, being the funnel through which it all comes. But you have to have an understanding of it, and you have to know the timing of it in order to make sure that the message that you do own and the communication channels and strategies that you do control, you can make them the most effective, because you understand everything else that is coming at your employees. It also helps you to advocate for your employees to other parts of the business. I was part of a roundtable discussion a few weeks ago where it was interesting. The group of communicators was still talking about the fact that they are seen as the naysayers within the business, right? People are scared to come to them because they're afraid they're always going to say no. And I'd be curious how many of you feel like you're in that position a lot where you're pushing back on communication because you know it's not going to have the desired impact, right? You know that's not what matters right now. Doesn't mean it's not important ever, but it's not going to make the impact right now. We have to look at a different time and place and way to communicate that strategically. And when you have a matrix, when you've done an audit and you've looked at all of these channels and you've evaluated the different times and places and ways that people are getting communication, it helps you come back to that team and not say, no, I'm not going to send that out because it's not important. But you can say, hey, Monday's not a great day for that. Friday's not a great day for communication. But you know what? I think if we schedule this in as part of our newsletter on, in the Wednesday cadence, that might be a good place to hit this audience. And that might, and talk about what the desired outcome is of that communication to help to really put that in perspective for the person that's bringing it to you. So you're not saying no, you're saying not right now and helping them be more effective in what it is they're communicating. So hopefully they come to you sooner next time. And instead of saying, hey, get this out for me, it's, I have this communication, I have this thing I have to do. What's the most effective way for us to get that done? And you can work together. And you don't go into that paralyzed state within communications in your business. So some of the other things to stop is assuming what our audiences really want from us, right? We all know the saying about assuming. And again, this comes into use your expertise, use your insight into your audiences, use your resources to go out and ask for people's opinions and thoughts and ideas to ensure that when you're putting together communication strategies, you really are taking into account the overall employee experience and putting the best foot forward for that. I'm sure we can all raise our hand about a campaign that we tried to run that we thought was going to be amazing, right? Because we were doing something new and different. We thought everybody was going to participate and it was going to be wonderful. And it completely fell flat. Sometimes asking people a few questions before we launch that would have helped us make that more successful, right? Maybe it wasn't the idea, maybe it was the timing. Maybe we didn't know something else was happening on that same day. So it's really important to stop making assumptions about what matters and what's important to our employees and start asking, right? Bring together those focus groups, get the feedback, find out what they want and need from you in that time and help to deliver it across your organization. And I love this last point so much about show, don't tell, right? I think that starting to talk about social issues within our organizations, it's a challenge, right? Because you know that not everybody thinks and feels the same way. And it's something that you really have to have buy-in from your leadership team on with how you're going to address things. And again, making sure you're not just focusing on one holiday or one, social advocacy month, but you're looking at all of them and you're figuring out, if I'm going to talk about this, how am I going to take action on it and not just put out the message or the email or the push notification on the app or the home, post on my homepage of my intranet, but what does it mean to our business to take a stand in one of these areas? And how do we do something with that to show employees that advocate for that as well, that we're with them, right? That it's more than just words, it's action. And so as you're evaluating those plans for 2023, and you're marking off your editorial calendar and sometimes checking those boxes, take that next step back and say, how do we show we mean this all year long? Maybe we highlight that action during this month or during this, this campaign, but how do we take action on it all year long and show that it's important to us as a business and show that it matters to our employees? And if you can't do all of that really well, then again, that's a strategic conversation you need to have, because if you highlight one over the other, you're not necessarily, again, making everybody across your organization feel that value. Thoughts on evaluating what matters. Has anyone taken steps to really collaborate cross-functionally with your other business partners to understand kind of that communication overload and have found an effective way to combat that?
Everyone is very quiet this afternoon, and that is okay. Maybe everyone needs another cup of coffee. Oh, we have one in the chat. Shannon said we have found great feedback with weekly message.
Yeah, that's consolidating, right? And so that's kind of step one, is the consolidation. And the second part of that is figuring out, is the channel I'm delivering that through effective, right? Am I reaching everyone that I want to reach with that communication, based on where I'm delivering it? So that's a great first step, right? Giving people they know they're going to get the weekly newsletter on Monday morning. They're looking for it. They're ready for it. They're reading what they need to read in it, taking action on the things they need to take action on, right? That's a great way to help that overload piece.
We have a couple of other conversations just going on in the chat. Of Meredith Daniels said this is an ongoing challenge and would just love to hear from others what they've been successful with for collaboration. And people have gone in with their newsletters, intranet stories, employee resource groups, in case you missed it on their intranet, weekly newsletter. So kind of the same stuff we're seeing in the chat.
Yeah, I've found sometimes too, just walking around, right? It doesn't have to be a formal focus group conversation. I've got a great example of this. Actually, I was with a client a couple of months ago, and we were out at one of their manufacturing facilities, and we were talking about, their employee app specifically. But one of the managers said, yeah, this is great, but it's one of 5 apps that employees are being asked to access right now. And it was a moment for that communications manager to go, I didn't know that. What are these other 5 apps that they're being asked for? And it was an opportunity to dive in and go, okay, so if I want my app to be the one that they're coming to, I need to figure out how to consolidate this information. I need to figure out how to make my app the access point to get to all of those others, so that employees aren't picking and choosing, don't feel that overload, too much communication coming at them, but know that if they come to the communications app, their employee app, they can also get into that HR tool. They can get into their payroll tool. They can get to these other places that are just as important to them, but are hard to remember when and how and why to access. So it can be just those little side conversations that can drive tremendous value. So not that we do these to make it a sales pitch at all. In fact, I'm really big on not making things a sales pitch, but I do want to talk a little bit about the employee app and what we do, so that if you're interested, you can reach back out to us as you're looking at new strategies for the year ahead. But our goal is to really create a better digital experience for your employees, not just from a communications front, but to be a point where you can connect to other access things within your organization, create efficiencies for your employees, to enhance their experience, create some of that equity, right? An employee that's in the office sitting in front of a desk that has access to all these tools and resources and communications channels. Now you can provide that same access point to employees on the front lines, working that hourly job in your manufacturing facilities. So it's important to provide that, and we've found a niche in being able to do that really effectively. So we offer both a mobile app, which has a news feed that can put a lot of those stories and headlines front and center for employees, connecting them to the culture driving content, as well as to the need to know information happening across the business, as well as a web app component that we just restructured. It is absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited that we are launching that right before the holidays, but creates more of a digital experience for your desk-bound employees as well. So it has more of an intranet like style feel, where you can adopt quick links and link out to different tools and access points that employees need throughout the day, in addition to keeping that communication that you're producing or encouraging your employees to participate in producing front and center as a hub of communication and resources for your employees. So some of the primary things that we do targeting content is so critical. When we are looking at all of the trends that we just talked about today, it's important to be able to target content to different groups at different times in order to make messaging really effective. We look at how you can measure and optimize the effectiveness of your communication as well. So bringing in your analytics and having that opportunity to see what you're putting out there is making an impact. And while that's going to show you initially just kind of where your clicks are happening and where employees are, engaging with your content, it's going to help you draw those larger connections to activation, right? And what are employees thinking, saying, feeling, and doing as a result of having better access to communication across our business. And then finally, we take security and compliance really importantly, which can be a difficult conversation sometimes to have with IT when you're trying to introduce a new tool for communication. But we take a lot of pride in ensuring that our channel is both easy to use for employees, but also really safe and secure for your business. So your information stays proprietary to you when that is what it's intended for. Finally, we've got some downloads here that we will provide for you. We talked about an internal communications audit. I don't think it matters how many tools, how many channels you're using. It is so important to do one of these once a year and really get an assessment of what's happening across your organization from a communications perspective. And again, this extends beyond your communications team. It really should be a chance to look at what other parts of your business are doing, even if it's informal communication, just to have an understanding of what you can be competing against within your business. How do you embrace those other communications channels that may be effective? How do you have better face-to-face communications from managers to employees, so that your messaging can extend beyond some of the tools and channels you're using today. So we will provide that for you as well as all of the tools and resources that we offer on our website. They're not just specific to using a mobile app. We know not everybody's there. We know that some people are using different tools. You've got to find what works for you. But we offer a lot of insights into communications in general. So we really highly encourage you to check out theemployeeapp.com and see all of those resources that we have to offer. And that gives us some time for additional conversation or questions, or if you've seen anything else come up in the chat, Nicole.
Lots of thank yous, lots of LinkedIn's.
Good, that's great. I love that
Appreciate
these
it.
connect people, right?
Yeah.
If you have no other takeaway than you met somebody that you're like, oh, I want to keep talking to them. That's so great to me.
Amy would be my person if anyone takes down Amy's LinkedIn. And even like she said, even if you're not in the market right now for any technology or anything like that, the employee app is a really great team of people. And it's not just Amy. There are a few of them, others, Sydney, Mike. I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of them this year in person, which was really awesome outside of the virtual world. And they're just a really great team to work with and partner with. So I know that we really appreciate it. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Amy.
No, thank you for having us. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope you all have really happy holidays, however you celebrate. And hopefully we'll see you at an event in 2023 as well.
So thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Amy, thank you.